Alright, this is a 2.5 ribbon mixer cleaning process of the shafts and tutorial of how to take apart these shafts here for the PM. You will need size 12 millimeter, 17, 24, and right now we have a 1, but you usually need two 24s to take off. This bearing right here. Alright, we now have the 12 millimeter bolts and 17 millimeter bolts taken off. On to the next step. Alright, the two pieces come off. They slide right off. First piece is the first top half. That's off right now. And we'll slide the other piece off and let those soak. Go ahead. Alright, this pulls out. In order to get it out, you have to twist it around to the top, as you can see here. And that'll come right off. Kind of stubborn, got a lot of junk on it. Okay, so that's off there. As you can see, a lot of junk in there. This is a result of water being pushed into the shaft and a combination of powder getting in there as well. This was cardio, a lot of cardio. Next step is to take the large bolts off, which is 24 millimeter on the bearing. There's one on top and one on bottom. That'll allow us to get this part here. It's a brass bearing, and the seals off. Let those soak in some water and we can clean this all by hand. Alright, the two set screws on the shaft here by the bearing are 4 millimeter. It's been written on here just as a reminder. 4 millimeter, two set screws. In order to get that off, the bearing off of the shaft, we will have to actually not remove them, but just take them out about halfway and just leave them in there so that we don't lose those. Now we're going to take this off the bearing. Go ahead, Jacob. Slide it off. Sometimes you need to use persuasion. The mallet maybe. It should come right off. Has a plate underneath that comes with it. That will have to be returned, of course. And we're off. Okay, now go ahead and slide those other two off, guys. These will need to be returned the same way. You'll see it's absolutely terrible. We'll get that cleaned up. Next, two seals come off. I'm going to show those two. Take the seals off. Those can be reused as long as they're not beat up too much. There's one. Okay. And there's the second one. Those need to be replaced in the same order. And this, here's the brass ring. You can tell it's gunked all inside and on the outside. And we will remove all that junk. Okay. Okay, now, so we've got the shaft here that's rag soaked in 815. Makes your life easier. Come back to it in about 10-15 minutes. Everything should wipe off and you can clean it up. It's good not to try to scrape anything off with any kind of metal object, screwdriver or tool, because it will damage the shaft. So we can use a zip tie or something to get all the big pieces off first, and then they won't damage the shaft. Alright, so we've got all the parts cleaned up, as you can tell. We've got them in order the way they should be set. If you notice on these two pieces here, the shaft collars, if you look really closely, you can see they say BL, bottom left, and top left. That's if you're facing the machine to open it up. So left would be your left if you're opening the top of the machine here. So, and you got your shaft collar here. This has to be put on like this. Don't forget that these here, if you need to make sure that these are still in good shape. If they're too frayed, then we've got some new pieces that we need to cut to fit, and we can replace those. And there's your brass collar right there. And don't forget to put on the seal that goes on the hopper. Okay, we'll put this together and we'll do another step by step. Okay, on each necessary bolt and part, it's been engraved where they go. Like this one says top left side of the machine, again facing the machine where you open it. Top left here, 17mm bolt goes there, and on top of here it shows 12mm, and that's what we'll use. Bolts also say this, and then on the bottom, as you can see, 24mm. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and put this together. It's got to go in this order. Jacob's got this under control, so we'll just follow him. First, you got your seal. Push that on evenly, like he's doing. We've actually greased the shaft with some food grade silicone just to help with the spots that are rubbing. For instance, like here it's rubbing, so we'll just put food grade silicone from here to here, and then a little on the end so the bearing can go on there really easy. Next piece is the brass collar. It's got to go on there. Next is it's another collar there that holds these in. We'll stick that on there and we'll let it sit like that. And now we're going to put on the bearing on the end. First part goes on is that piece. And this should slip on. In order for that to get on, you have to either put them on together or set it on like he has. And then you got to lift the shaft up by hand in the center. So Ben, go ahead and lift the shaft up. Give him a little room. There you go. Put that on. That's the easiest part. Easiest way to do it. Just like so. Okay. And then that's where we pull it up, and he'll stick that in there. Sometimes it'll go right in. You lift it up just a little like that, and plop it in. All right, and then what you want to do is you want to check all your parts before you put any bolts on to make sure you've got everything on the way you're supposed to. Make sure you're not forgetting anything, and then make sure your parts that you have are on the correct way. This one doesn't go on just yet to be on the top because you have to bolt it in, but we've got this on correctly. Set screws are facing outward. We've got our little plate on, and that should do it for right now. Okay, we put on the two seals there, one in front, one behind the brass ring. The brass ring lines up with the air nozzle where we put the air in. Normally that pushes air through the shaft to keep powder out. Doesn't work like we expected, so we don't use it currently. Now we're putting the bottom left part on. It goes on to the top. You set it on those two, and then you swivel it around. It's the only way to get it on, otherwise you can't get it on. Swivel it around like that, and then it gets just pushed straight onto the bolts. Like so. Okay. And now what you want to do, you want to take those two and the brass ring and you move them towards the center here. Right in front of the bolts. That way you can set it on and then you can push it in. Go ahead. Set it on, push it in, and now we'll put the bolts on. Okay, now we're going to slip the collar in and bolt that in by hand. So he's lining up that top piece there. That needs to face up. It says top. And each one of these bolts will go in by hand until they're, I don't know, just a little bit tight by hand. If you don't put these in by hand and you tighten them up, it will not work. They all need to be threaded in by hand, get them started, then we'll go back and all the bolts right now are just hand tight. And we'll go back and tighten them all together. Okay, on this side, you're allowed to take off this bearing on the end and tighten all these bolts accordingly. This collar out here with the 12 millimeters, it's easier to get to when you use a socket wrench. Doing it by hand with an open end does not work too well, and you're here forever. So in order to put this part onto here, when everything's tightened up, all you need to do is, you can tell this can move up and down, so this should be no problem putting on the end here. Okay, now we've tightened up these 12 millimeter bolts and the 17. It was better to do the tightening of the 12 millimeter with a socket and extension with the bearing off. That was a lot easier than running in here with the open end box wrench. So keep that in mind. That's a lot easier. Put this in all together, bolt them down, tighten them up, and that should be the end of that. So that's a basic tutorial that should help you take this apart, put it back together,